Let's start with Sheila Sharp. Imagine being 14 years old, carefree, and staying at your neighbor's house overnight. Sheila had no idea that when she walked back to her family's cabin the next morning, her life would change forever. It was April 12th, 1981, and the morning was quiet. Maybe she was thinking about breakfast or the plans she had for the day. But as she stepped into cabin 28, her thoughts stopped. The first thing Sheila saw was blood. The living room, a space where her family usually spent happy moments, was now a crime scene. Her mother, Sue Sharp, was lying on the floor, partially undressed. Her brother John and his best friend Dana Wingate were nearby. All three were bound, beaten, and dead. Sheila screamed, ran out of the house, and called for help. Neighbors came rushing over, but nothing could be done. The killers were gone, leaving behind only chaos, blood, and an air of mystery that still lingers today. But that wasn't all. Sheila soon realized something else. Her 12-year-old sister, Tina, was missing. Where was Tina? Why was she taken, while Sheila's younger brothers Rick and Greg and their friend Justin Smart were found alive in another room? This wasn't just a brutal triple murder. It was the beginning of a sinister mystery that would remain unsolved for decades. To understand what happened to the Sharp family, we need to go back to 1979. Glenna Susan Sue Sharp, the family's matriarch, was a strong woman. She had 5 kids, John, Sheila, Tina, Rick, and Greg, and a husband she needed to escape. Sue's husband was abusive, and she decided enough was enough. She packed her things, took her kids, and left Connecticut, heading for California. Sue wanted a better life for her family, so she moved them to Quincy, a small town in Northern California where her brother lived. At first, the Sharps lived in a tiny trailer. Money was tight, but Sue did her best, taking odd jobs and relying on food stamps. Then they got lucky. A cabin at the nearby Keddie resort, Cabin 28, became available. It was bigger and more comfortable than the trailer, even though it was still modest. Keddie Resort was a quiet community, surrounded by the beautiful Sierra Nevada mountains. It seemed like a peaceful place for Sue and her kids to start over. The Sharps moved into the cabin in the fall of 1980. Sue focused on providing for her kids, and the family began to settle into their new life. But life wasn't perfect. The Sharps weren't wealthy, and Sue was often stressed, juggling the demands of being a single mom. Despite these challenges, Sue was determined to give her kids the best life she could. No one could have predicted the horror that would unfold less than a year after they moved into Cabin 28. April 11th, 1981, began as a normal Saturday. The Sharp family went about their day like usual. There were 7 people inside Cabin 28, 7 souls under one roof, each of them going about their evening like any other. But by the early hours of April 12th, only 4 would live to see the sunrise. Let's walk through who was there, what brought them to this house, and why the survivors' presence only adds to the unsettling mystery of the Keddie murders. Glenna Sue Sharp, a single mom, Sue's oldest son, John, was the kind of boy who took care of his family. He looked after his younger siblings, loved to hang out with his best friend Dana, and was protective of his mom. That day, John and Dana had been out in Quincy, hitchhiking back to Keddie later in the evening. By the time the killers arrived, John and Dana were already back home. Dana wasn't part of the Sharp family by blood, but he was like a brother to John. He was spending the night at the Sharps' cabin after a day of hanging out with his best friend. Dana, like John, was in the living room when the killers attacked. Tina, Sue's youngest daughter, was the missing piece of the puzzle that would haunt investigators for years. Earlier that evening, Tina had been watching TV at the neighbor's house, but she returned home around 9:30 p.m. She likely went straight to bed, unaware of what was coming. Rick, Sue's second youngest son, was just 10 years old that night. He was asleep in the back bedroom. The killers didn't harm Rick. Greg, the baby of the Sharp family, was only 5 years old. Like Rick, he was asleep in the same bedroom during the murders. Justin wasn't a Sharp family member, but he was close friends with Rick and Greg. He was spending the night at the cabin, likely just another fun sleepover for the boys. He claimed to have slept through the murders, but later, under hypnosis, he described seeing 2 men in the cabin. When police arrived at the scene, what they found was nothing short of horrific. The living room looked like the site of a massacre. Sue's body was found in the living room, lying on her side near the sofa. She was partially undressed, stripped from the waist down, though investigators didn't find clear evidence of SA. Her throat had been slit, leaving a gruesome, gaping wound. She had been stabbed multiple times in the chest, with one of the wounds piercing her lungs. Sue's face and head showed signs of blunt force trauma, likely caused by the butt of a Daisy BB gun. Sue's hands and ankles were bound with medical tape and electrical cords. This wasn't just murder, this was personal. The killers wanted Sue restrained, humiliated, and destroyed. John was found lying face up near the front door. He had been stabbed repeatedly, with deep gashes covering his body. His throat was slashed in a way that left no chance for survival. Blood evidence suggested that John had been brutally beaten. His body showed signs of blunt force trauma, likely inflicted with the same hammer or BB gun used on Sue. John's position suggested he may have tried to defend his family, putting himself between the attackers and his loved ones. Dana was found lying next to John. He had been strangled to death, his neck showing signs of compression. Dana also suffered blunt force trauma to the head, suggesting the killers used a hammer or similar weapon on him as well. It was clear that Dana didn't go quietly. Like John, Dana likely fought back, but the attackers were relentless. Tina was missing from the crime scene. Her absence added a chilling layer to the tragedy. The search for Tina became a top priority. For 3 years, there was no sign of her. Then, in 1984, her skull and bones were found in a remote area called Camp 18, about 60 miles from Keddie. The crime scene at Cabin 28 wasn't just brutal, it was chaotic. The killers left behind the tools of their violence. A hammer and 2 knives were found at the scene. One of the knives was bent, suggesting the sheer force used during the attack. Blood spatter patterns told a story of struggle, desperation, and unrelenting violence. Investigators believe the murders took place in the living room, with Sue, John, and Dana restrained and attacked one by one. But how could 3 people be killed so violently without waking the younger boys in the other room? Justin's stepfather, Martin, quickly became a suspect. He lived nearby and reportedly had issues with Sue. He told police a hammer was missing from his home. Strangely, a hammer matching his description was found in a pond near Keddie decades later. Martin even allegedly confessed to a counselor, saying, "I've paid the price of your love with 4 people's lives." Over the years, several theories have emerged. Some believe the murders were personal, perhaps connected to Sue's past or her relationships. Others think it was a random act of violence. There's even speculation of a cover-up, possibly involving local authorities. Despite decades of investigation, the Keddie murders remain unsolved. DNA evidence found on tape at the crime scene matched a living suspect in 2018, but no arrests have been made. Theories about the murders range from personal grudges to a possible cover-up by law enforcement. What we do know is this: 4 lives were stolen that night, and a family was destroyed. The truth about what happened in Cabin 28 may never fully come to light, but the chilling details of this case continue to haunt everyone who hears the story. The Keddie murders leave us with more questions than answers, even decades later. Who entered Cabin 28 that night and unleashed such unimaginable violence? Why were 3 lives taken so brutally while 3 young boys were left untouched? And what dark motives led to 12-year-old Tina's disappearance and tragic death? This case is unfortunately cold. It lingers as one of America's most haunting mysteries, a story of violence, loss, and injustice. Yet, the determination of investigators, the Sharp family's remaining loved ones, and true crime enthusiasts keep the hope alive that one day the truth will emerge. Hit that like button if you found this case as haunting as we did. Subscribe to stay updated with more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new video. And we'd love to hear from you. What's your theory about the Keddie murders? Drop a comment below and let's discuss the possibilities. Thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one.